Hidden archaeologies, my favourite. Excellent research, very mysterious. See it properly. There's some metal residue here. It's gold. That's interesting. The notches in the bone were made by a sharp instrument. The sickle matches the notches to a T. Hey, didn't this edition mention something in connection with sacrificial rites in Britain? Let's see. Yes, here it is. An article about the Druids and their sacrificial rites. The latest findings indicate that in ancient England it was probable for their high ceremonies, the Celts... Incredible. It all fits in with this bone. I'm sure the detective will be very interested. Mr. Halligan? I believe I've found something interesting about your bone.
Go ahead.
In my opinion, this bone was worked on with a sickle.
With a sickle?
Yes. And probably with a sickle made of gold.
What makes you think that?
The bone bears notches matching the cutting form of a sickle to a T, and I found a trace of gold in one of the notches.
A golden sickle? Who would use a weapon like that in order to cut a human being to pieces?
That's what I asked myself as well. I found an interesting article which could help us. According to the historian Arthur Blake, the Britannic Druids carried out very bloody sacrificial rites. He found out that such rites took place at major celebrations of the Celts. He assumes that consecrated golden sickles were used for those rites.
And how does he know about these things?
He learned about it from old inscriptions he's translating at the moment. Interesting, huh?
Celts? Druids? Quite some time has passed since then, hasn't it?
Of course, but the descriptions in the article absolutely match the findings on your bone, Mr. Halligan. I'm sure the author of the article can help you.
What did you say this author's name was?
Blake. Arthur Blake.
Was there any mention in the article of how you could get in touch with the man?
I thought you'd ask that. His address was printed below the article. 366 Pinewood Road, Northampton.
What do you think? Could this Blake be right?
I don't know. Maybe he just wants to make money with horror stories about ancient Britain, but the bone you've shown me would match his theory quite well.
So you think this murder could be a ritual murder?
Yes, it would be possible. There are several occult sects and Satanists. They like checking their history books and adopting archaic rituals.
Have you ever seen anything similar in your career?
Oh, Mr. Halligan, you don't know the Aztec scar walls. If you'd seen those, you'd consider your bone harmless.
Maybe, but that was centuries ago. The victim of this murder was found this morning, and it was found in London. I'm going there now.
Mr. Halligan, I'm interested in this, particularly because of my job. I'd like to help you with your case. Would you take me with you?
Impossible. It's confidential police work. I have to see him on my own. I'm sorry.
I'm sure my knowledge would be to your advantage, Mr. Halligan, and I think it would be really interesting to work on a case like that.
Oh, well, when I think about it, perhaps that's not a bad idea at all. Perhaps there will be more examinations to be done. Okay, Miss Turner, let's do it like this. I'll keep you informed on the case. If I hear anything new or if I need your help, I'll contact you. What do you think?
All right. I'll see you later then.
Yeah, see you later. And thank you, Miss Turner. I would like to ask you some questions about your work, just out of interest. What are all these strange things here in your lab?
They're things my father and I have brought back from various expeditions. They have to be catalogued, will then become part of the permanent exhibition of our museum. Some things are personal presents. We keep those, of course.
You see quite a lot of the world, don't you?
Yes, that's part of my job.
What's your father's current research project?
He's in Kenya studying initiation rituals.
What?
The rituals carried out when the childhoods of boys and girls end and they're admitted to the circle of adults.
What's your research field?
I specialize in sacrificial rites.
Sacrificial rites? That's an unusual research field for a young woman.
Do you think so? I don't think you should divide preferred science fields for men or women, Mr. Halligan.
No, I didn't mean it like that. I just think that you must have to do with death all the time if you research sacrifices.
Death is part of our existence, Mr. Halligan. In all cultures, all around the world.
You're telling me. If you take it like that, we are almost like colleagues.
Maybe. But it's not my job to put people in jail. I document the sacrificial rites of different cultures in order to help create a better mutual understanding.
What is there to be understood about murder?
I'm not saying that I approve of everything I research, Mr. Halligan, but in foreign cultures, not all sacrificial rites are regarded as murder. Most cultures sacrifice animals or plants, and they do so for religious reasons. Human sacrifices don't exist anywhere in the world at present. They're a thing of the past.
I'm going there now.
Mr. Halligan, I'm interested in this, particularly because of my job. I'd like to help you.
Impossible.
I'm sure, and I...
Okay, if I...
All right.
Yeah. How long have you been working here?
Several years. My father helped me to get the job here at the museum.
Connections are indispensable nowadays, aren't they?
I was the most qualified applicant. But it's not easy to gain acceptance with the old boys of the museum's board when you're a woman. You have to be at least twice as good as the best male applicant.
And you were?
Of course I was. It's been decided that I'll be the head of the museum as soon as my father retires.
When will that be?
In 5 years?
Then you will have achieved a lot for someone your age.
How old do you think I am?
I'd say 29.
Exactly.
What did you say this? This must be it. Pretty out of the way. Mr. Blake?
Yes?
My name's Brent Halligan. I'm a detective from Scotland Yard. I have a few questions I need to ask you.
Scotland Yard? What's this about? Is something wrong?
I'd rather we discuss this in private. Do you mind if I come in?
I'm not sure. What's happened? Is there a problem with one of my publications?
No, sir. I'm investigating a murder case. Perhaps you could help me? It really won't take very long.
Murder? Awful. But what's it got to do with me?
Mr. Blake, I'd really prefer it if we could go somewhere a little more private. May I come in?
Well, yes, certainly. Come on in.
You're the author of a book on Druids, am I right?
Yes, quite correct. In fact, I'm just working on a revised version for the next edition. But what makes you so interested in my book?
I'm currently investigating a series of murders in London. I've made some interesting discoveries that I'd like to discuss with you.
What series of murders are we talking about?
The skeleton murders. You may have read about them in the papers.
Oh, yes. Of course. Terrible business.
Mr. Blake, I believe there may be some sort of ritual behind these murders.
Well, what makes you think that?
Dr. Turner from the Anthropological Museum in Oxford examined one of the last victim's bones for me. She found residual traces of gold on it and round notches.
Round notches, you say?
Yes. Does that mean anything to you? Doesn't your book on Druids mention ritual killings for which a golden sickle was used?
True. Are you saying these murders are based on the same ritual?
That's what I've come to ask you.
But that's impossible. It can't be true. My God. It would be unthinkable. It would confirm all my translations. I've been researching the history of the Druids for 30 years now, but I've never yet found proof of my greatest fears.
Your greatest fears?
Yes, the perfection of the final ritual, the final confirmation of the Druids' power.
What's this final ritual all about?
This is the text I wrote down during my travels through England and France. You know, when you travel through the country, you can feel that many locals still believe in the old Celtic customs. A group of farmers in the south of England let me copy the inscriptions on a megalith that stands in a field there. They claim that there used to be a huge Druid temple close to their house, but there's nothing left of it now. Whatever. I managed to translate the text, at least in part.
Okay, Mr. Blake, please come to the point. What does it say?
It says that the last of the Druids saw the fall of their priesthood coming in the year 1000 AD. In the confusion surrounding the final destruction of the Order, a demonic superior Druid seized power, using his knowledge of Druid magic, not for the good of his people and to honor the gods, but to submit all of mankind to his rule. In order to secure the survival of the Druids' tradition, and to complete his devilish work, he organized a final ritual, transferring the knowledge and power of the last of the Druids to 5 infants. These infants have always been referred to as the inheritors.
Go on.
The inscription says that the ritual was not entirely completed. I've not yet been able to discover why, but from what I've learnt, the inheritors are strong and powerful enough to one day complete the ritual by themselves.
What happened to the Druids after 1000 AD?
Well, that's a good question, Mr. Halligan. Scientists are still arguing on that point. Some suspect that many Druids simply became priests in the Christian church. After all, Christian priests took over the position in society that had formerly been reserved for the Druids. They simply changed their jobs.
And secretly continued their own religion?
That's not unlikely. They certainly influenced the Christian church. That we do know. Some experts believe that the Druids' order never ceased to exist. That's where the myth surrounding the final ritual comes in. It supposedly took place 1,000 years ago.
Tell me more about the Druids.
Well, the Druids were Celtic priests. They were highly respected scholars, responsible for preserving the Celtic religion and science. Their main tasks included conducting sacrificial rituals, medicine, astronomy, and justice. Experts now believe that Druidism began in ancient Britain and spread from there to the European continent, especially to Gaul. The first definite evidence of the Druids' existence goes back to 500 BC.
That's a long time ago.
Quite. And for at least 500 years from then on, the Druids were the most important class of Celtic society.
What happened then?
Well, with Britain and Gaul being conquered by the Romans, the Druids were quickly suppressed. Their doctrine was abolished and replaced by Roman tenets. In the end, Christianity took over. And by around 1000 AD, Druidism seems to have vanished.
What did the Druids and their followers believe in?
Well, that's not so very easy to explain. Like the Romans and the Greeks, the Celts had a number of gods to whom various functions were ascribed. They paid homage to these gods with rituals and sacrifices. Many of their cult rituals were performed for the stars and the 4 elements: fire, water, air, and earth. Their religious acts always took place in forests, usually in a clearing or at some other prominent location. The Druids didn't start building their temples until they had met the Romans.
What were their rituals like?
Well, they mainly made sacrifices on special occasions. Druids would burn plants and twigs to transfer them into the realm of the divine.
That doesn't sound so terrible.
No, but they also sacrificed animals. Mostly rams or pigs. Roman writers even mention cruel human sacrifices, crucifixions, decapitations, and regular slaughters on the altar.
What? Oh, that's horrific.
Not all of these stories are based on definite facts, Mr. Halligan.
I'd like to know more about the 4 elements.
The Druids regarded the 4 elements as the material of which the world is made. They invoked the elements and used them for their rituals. There were only three proper elements: air, water, and earth. Fire, the fourth element, existed solely for the purpose of transferring one of the three basic elements into another.
What do you mean?
Well, solids or liquids become gaseous through fire. Gas can be turned into liquid form with the help of fire. Take a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen, for example. Fire, therefore, represents transformation, the transferal of one element into a new condition.
That sounds pretty complicated.
I suppose it does when you first hear it, but it's actually quite simple.
Yes, well, that's what my colleague Chris Hecker always tries to tell me whenever he starts lecturing me about chemistry.
Quite right, Mr. Halligan. I shouldn't bore you with such details.
Right. But what have these murders got to do with the myth?
Well, that's just it, Mr. Halligan. I haven't told you the whole story yet.
There's more?
Yes. The inscriptions explain that the Druids' inheritors require the life force of other people to complete the ritual.
I see. And how do they do that?
According to legend, the flesh has to be cut off the bones of living humans and to be eaten. Only then can their life force be transferred.
You mean the victims of these skeleton murders were practically eaten alive by cannibals?
By Druids. Yes.
I don't believe it.
The worst is yet to come, Mr. Halligan.
What? What could possibly be worse than that?
If such skeletons have been found in London, bearing marks of a golden sickle, it can only mean one thing. The inheritors are preparing for the perfection of their final ritual.
Which means?
The myth says, once the ritual has been completed, the world will become a place governed by evil. Dark magic will be unleashed upon the world, and mankind will have but one choice: to obey or to die.
Great. And you really believe all that?
I believe it's possible. You know, Mr. Halligan, I'm not a superstitious man, but I've spent enough time studying Druidism to know that more goes on between heaven and earth than we can possibly imagine.
I quite agree.
You see, and the skeletons that have been found within the past few months fit in perfectly with the Druids' sacrificial rites. The day of the ritual's perfection is drawing near. Of that I'm certain. What we're looking at right now is just the beginning. Before we're through, more people will die, and the inheritors will soon be strong enough.
What can we do about it?
Time is running out, Mr. Halligan. You must find the inheritors and put them out of action.
That's an easy thing to say, but how can I?
There may be a way. During my latest research, I came across something very interesting. If the story I've heard is true, then there's a certain item that was extremely important for the ritual 1,000 years ago.
What is it?
A piece of jewelry mentioned in the old inscriptions, the Amulet of Transformation. You should try to gain possession of that amulet.
The Amulet of Transformation? What's its purpose?
I don't know, Mr. Halligan. Nobody does. All I do know is that the myth says it's important for the completion of the ritual. If you find the amulet, you may be able to prevent the ritual.
How did you find out about the amulet?
My work led to the discovery of a connection between the Druids of Gaul and Britain. It seems there was a small group of British Druids who fled to France when the ritual failed.
What for?
I don't know. Maybe they wanted to save the amulet. I found out that a 13th century despotic French nobleman somehow gained possession of the amulet. I found a picture of him in an old archive.
Really? Let me see. Well, he doesn't look particularly friendly. Was he a druid?
Well, he must have had something to do with the Druids, but I really can't tell you how he gained possession of the amulet. However, he is the only clue that I can possibly give you as to the whereabouts of the amulet. I suggest that you make your way to Carmore. With any luck, you may find more clues leading to the amulet there.
All right, Mr. Blake. I'll get going immediately.
Take care of yourself, Mr. Halligan. Good luck.